What's going on, workforce? Long hair and the clown here. If you don't know what that means, you should check out the previous video at the end of it, talking about the raid series. We're talking about today our MSQ expectations, how we're kind of planning to approach it. Overall, like, I think this is going to be, feels like it's going to be a significant piece to the MSQ, with at the same time not necessarily having such gravity. I think a lot of us 14 players, especially veterans, are like, what's next, etc. So Chris, let's start with you. You've been playing through like 2.0, trying to get basically that 2.0 experience before it completely changes on the 12th. And
which I think will be for the better. I just want to try it before it's gone.
Yeah, experience it now, as we said in our do it now before 6.1. What are your general expectations? You've done Shadowbringers, you've done Endwalker, you're kind of getting caught back up on the first half of the story. What does 6.1 mean to you? What are you looking for in terms of the story?
So I'm kind of in a weird spot. As I come up on the end of ARR, it's less and less like I kind of know what's happening to I don't really know what's happening to like, whoa, I can't believe that's happening. So, and as we get into Heaven's Word and Stormblood, I don't know that lore. I'm seeing job quest stuff for the first time. So there's all these things I've never done. The Alliance raids, last time you said you'd like to tier list, I'd have to tier list it based on mechanics and ambiance and feel and what the community tells me, because I don't really know the lore behind them. And so I am looking forward to getting to know more about the lore, but I will tell you, like, I'm in a weird spot because as I know more about the lore, I find myself listening to like Eorzean Archives. They have like some big long, like hour-long videos about just Thanalan. I find myself listening to like, there's a number of new lore creators coming up. That's just the one that jumps to mind. And I find myself like,
love them guys, by the way. If you're not following them, I'll tag them in this channel. Like, you should absolutely be following the Eorzean Archives. Go ahead.
And so I find myself looking forward to like Pyromancer's content now that he's finished Endwalker. Big congrats there. As you know, Noble comes up behind him, as Breach comes up behind him. What are the kind of the thoughts from the community as these big moments cause us to well up and share our thoughts? And hopefully more of these like Jesse Cox, Astral Umbral type moments. And I find myself Googling a lot of stuff. I'm sitting around at night on Gamerscape reading all the different blurbs about like a particular subject, because I'm kind of in a weird spot where like I don't want the big moments of the story to be spoiled. Like if I'm coming up on it, they're like, oh, in the next scene somebody dies, I don't want to know that. But at the same time, like I'm like, I wonder what's going on with like the Sigali Desert. And so I'm off like Googling things, and I'm down and I'm reading about sandworms and all this crap. And so I find myself thinking about where we would go from here, right? Because 6.1 is the start of something new. Yoshi has mentioned he does want to at some point create a new player experience that is separate from ARR. That could be 10.0, 12.0, 82.0. It doesn't matter. I used to think I want that to be a separate shard, right? As somebody who first really, truly, deeply cared for the story in Shadowbringers, it naturally made sense to me. Let's make this is all going to be a spoiler, by the way. Let's make it a reflection. Let's isolate it. And we'll go through the entire storyline of a reflection from like 1 to 30, and then we'll dump them in. And that'll be an optional thing that other people can go do, but new players will start there. And we'll have them run into a Sundered Ascian. We'll have them run into a Primal, and we'll teach them all these things very rapidly, and then dump them in where they have at least a basic understanding, like this big extended Hall of the Novice that also talks about lore. And introduces them to great things like Soken and Fates and awesome. And so, but now I don't want that. I want an expansion set aside to Mercidia. Ooh. And I want the starting point to be the Isles in the South Sea where Arcanists come from. Off of that, so that it is part of that Mercidia expansion. Yeah. So if I back that out, we can't go there between 6.0 and 7.0 because I want that set aside for its own expansion, because I don't want that to be a passing thing like Badner and Garlemald where they're part of an expansion. Like it was like an instant zone or something. I want the whole thing focused on Mercidia. Yeah. So what's left? I think Corvos is something that, like, the amount of things I want to know about Corvos, we could go there as like part of an expansion. So I'd love if they blew us away and showed us a new zone. They've never really done that before. I'd love if they added a zone to the game.
That would be historic for Final Fantasy. That would
not Eureka Bosja.
Right. Yeah, because you're right. We've gotten zones, but they've been like instants. And honestly, I think the zones that we've gotten, especially when you talk about Eureka, are some of the best zones. As I hit the mic and pull on the cord,
they're beautiful.
Oh, Brian's excited.
It's frustrating you can't go back and use them for flight or whatever.
It would be like, that's the one, like, again, I'll continue to say, like, the one change I would love to see Eureka's turn into also leveling content. And like then bottom, exactly like Bosja. Like, oh, you want to go level in that? Perfect. In fact, actually, it's one thing that I'd like to spend some time in. Hopefully, we'll do some Eureka here soon again. But Oh man, like if I'm not expecting that, but here's the thing: like if they ever delivered that, that would be so
That's my
freaking
fall out of the
hyped.
chair request.
That would be so freaking hyped. And if they delivered it without ever telling it, like don't even say
No
like,
warning.
yeah, like wait, what? You want me to go? Huh? What's
We're just
this?
gonna explore some places.
Just a new place. Just yeah.
We're just exploring places.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
so like we'll just go to like some corner of Thanaland that you couldn't get to without flight before, and we'll just talk to somebody there that wasn't there before. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. And then you're gonna get on a boat and go to Corvos. Wait, what?
What? Coming in? Okay. Well, hey guys, new area. Like, wow, good job, team. That'd be wild. I actually like, so when it comes down to where the game is headed, and obviously we're, like we said, we're talking a little bit of spoilers here. So when it comes to where the game is headed, Mercidia is one option. The New World is another option. And other shards, which we have several other shards, right? So I think that essentially if you end up doing an expansion, like if it's a shard, the whole expansion's the shard, I would assume, like you're not going to be like, we're Shadow, like Shard Hop, Final Fantasy XIV's 8.0 Shard Hopper, where it's like, hey, we're going to go three shards. Each of them have 2 zones. Like that would feel that each shard, unless, obviously if the story of each shard was like, they've been overly consumed, but we didn't already have that set up. So I would assume that a shard actually would be a fully functioning reflection as opposed to the first, which we knew that the light Aether was happening. That was something leading up into the story. So this 6.1 is, I think it's going to start to really, I don't think it's going to reveal the mystery, but I think it's going to have us coming down and saying like, I'm at 75% Mercidia, 25% other shard, New World, gonna have to wait. Like where, like when we look at that, that's literally where it's like, I feel like 6.1, but then maybe in 6.2, oh, now I'm thinking other shard. It's like, ooh, like that's where I'm like wondering if they're going to have any kind of like, toying with us in a way that just like they do with the jobs, where they kind of put the hints of the job in the story, in the updates, and then ultimately, in hindsight you're like,
not enough.
They don't, outside the Hrothgar, that was like, but that was related to a bug. The Hrothgar got revealed in game before, they revealed it outside of it. And that was just like, okay, we know that's happening. Man,
that's my fall out of the chair. We'll start there and we'll work down to less exciting.
Okay.
So, stay as far into the video as you find exciting. We'll start. What's your fall out of the chair? 6.1. They said we're just gonna go explore new mysteries and like chat with people. And what is the interpretation of that you're like, wait, what?
I think for me, if we have it lean more into the dragons, that I think is going to be. I wouldn't maybe not classify as fall out of the chair.
Could take place in Tool.
Yeah,
could take place in.
Well, again, you have the construct of Bahamut. You still have the construct of Tiamat. You still have, Venat. And, so you still have these, like, big dragons. And while, obviously, Bahamut is, just Aether and Summon, like, with this, like, we know the dragons were here. We know Stormer's sleeping. Do we start to hear from him again, as now that, the despair has been defeated? And then also from the trailer itself, we're seeing the Lambs of Dalmod doing their kind of typical shenanigans. Like, are they going to start to kind of be a catalyst or even a bigger threat? We haven't heard of them since 2.0, really. And then I think maybe they were sprinkled in here and there. But, like they were the ones who were worshiping the gargoyle towers,
right.
And it's
they're one of the early dungeons.
Yeah. Exactly. But they were like coming off of obviously 2.0.
Like, you were defeated. They're like, no, that just makes me believe more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's going to be interesting as a thread. Obviously, it's going to be neat to see how much time has passed between Endwalker now, because clearly, from the trailer alone, Tataru is like kind of like, hey, it's kind of quiet around here. Like, this isn't the next day, hey, we disbanded and I'm just sitting here in this empty space. Like, it's, we'll have to wait and see where that thread goes. But yeah, I think if we get some dragon action, that will personally have me very, very excited.
All right, so let's dial it down. Mm-hmm. Now, what is something that's like really exciting, really big, but like totally within the realm of possibility?
I think then you see them moving more into kind of a story of the rebuilding of Garlemald. Like, that's like, hey, this is what's kind of happening. It's like, so makes sense, right? Because that's a thread that's not going to be fixed overnight. And so if you start to think about like
And it sets up a 6.2 or 3 rebuilding crafting content.
Exactly. And so that's where I think that could end up being kind of that, that thread. It's got us everybody checking in. And from a thread perspective, we already see here Stella studying books. So clearly that story and whatever she's going, I don't think that all of a sudden at the 6-1, she's off popping shards, right? Like, I think that's something that's building and building. And the payoff might not even be 7.0. Like, if the entire expansion is focused on Mirror, maybe that's where the information is that she needs in order to complete the puzzle, right? So, but that thread builds, and all of a sudden, then we go Mirror, and then all of a sudden she's able to get the missing, tomes that, whatever, that she seeks. And so I think essentially that's my thought.
Well, I'd love to see them use old zones. I do think they'll use Endwalker zones is the more reasonable guess. Mm-hmm. So I think Garlemald's a good guess. I think Thavner's a good guess. But if Myths of the Realm ends up being Elpis based, if it ends up being time based, then Elpis is pretty well taken care of. Between Pandemonium and Myths of the Realm, we've got lots of documentation from that era flowing out. Mm-hmm. So I do think, do we start to see what's going on with that bar out on Tool? Right, we mm-hmm. built all that up, and then there's just nothing out there.
Yeah.
And so do we start to go out there and kind of visit with those races? And if so, does that start to tie us into how the Omega content's going to get added? Because I assume that's tied out there to base Omicron. And does that start to tie back to Elpis so that we can build back, so that maybe next expansion we can justify having a raid series or a mythic raid, alliance raid series that goes back and explores like the fall of Alleg or something else that's just like, it's documented, but it's documented in passing. We didn't experience the fall of Alleg. Imagine if we got to be there and watch the events unfold, because now we can either look through somebody else's eyes, we can look through memories. We have Loperite technology that allows us to interpret Alleg tomes, so maybe we can just experience it through like some
and they've also got creation magic, so that they're going to be like, I mean, from a like just a not necessarily MacGuffin, but just from a like have you asked the Laperites? Like,
right, hey, between the Echo and the Laperites, anything is possible.
Oh man, like anything. And you look at the dungeons that we've gotten, and the fact we haven't seen whatever this next dungeon is. I mean, technically, I guess from the map and what that kind of story looks like, that seems pretty interesting to see if that ends up being the dungeon with the map and the different islands, or those could be the Southern Isles that you're referring to, kind of as a tease of a zone. That'd be wild. Like, yeah, we showed you in the trailer.
So then, as the third and final, right?
Yeah.
What is the one thing that, now we've talked about things we think could happen that we'd be excited about, things that would just blow us away? What's the thing that you're like, that tiny little seed of concern when a game says, "Hey, it's a new story"? Like, what's the reason nobody else does this? Like, there seems to be possibilities.
I think if anything, it just, people would be still winded. Like imagine playing all of Final Fantasy, ARR to Endwalker, and then being like, wow, that was a couple hundred hours, and then it's like, oh, now you're caught up. Like, maybe like, okay, that was quite like several hundred hours. Like, I've got 5,000 plus hours in the game, but that's over years of time. So it's like something where I can engage and disengage and end up just being overall very positive about it. So I think essentially you run the risk of burnout, or you run the risk of like, expecting, a big bad in 6.1, and, just like, oh, because what we have here that's unique to the history, 6.1 through 6.5, or assuming that we have 5 patches, is literally like all building up to 7.0. So it's not like, okay, this is going to a 5.3 or 6.3 where that's the real finale, right? So it's gonna I feel it's gonna be a little bit slower, and I think it's important that it's slower to differentiate. But I think it's going to set itself up. Like, it literally is, what you would, in a sports team, you'd call a rebuilding year. And what this is just like a rebuilding of, or kind of a setting the stage for where we're headed in the future. And if people aren't, don't get excited about that, I could anticipate some people online, and that's just because the nature of the internet, can't make everybody happy. They'll be like, whoa, where's the, but, that's the nature of it. And, people are going to stick around if they stick around, and then people maybe that's where PvP becomes like a real big focus for a little bit for people. Like, hey, check it out.
Yeah. I would be concerned that they dial the stakes up too fast, right? They go, well, actually, Endsinger was at the behest of this other beast. And it's like,
right.
Oh, come on, guys. Like let it really end. Let this play out as a true intermission that during the time will feel very slow, feel very, very calm. But when you look back and you have players coming on who are playing 2.0 through 8.0, they're like, oh man, that intermission really allowed it to build back up. Like, you know,
where like I could see it. And honestly, cause like they can do another big bad, but you wouldn't see essentially the hand or the shadow of the big bad, you know, for a little while. But like you think of something like, you know, in the history of, you know, Final Fantasy XIV or Final Fantasy, like with Genesis, like you have Kuja running around, and then in 9, they never, like one of the reasons why I'd love to see them do a sequel in 9 in that universe is that you also kind of have this other threat out there that, you know, etc. So you could end up setting the stage for like these little minor threats like the Lambs of Dalmud, but they end up tricking off, like, you know, like imagine if they brought in something like Genesis into the world of Final Fantasy XIV as the big bad that we're really not going to face off for another couple of expansions, right? But, you know, where the theories can start to kind of build, and then the kind of the hints and the subtleness of it, because, you know, kind of this galactic, you know, another galactic force that we eventually build back up to, threatening the, you know, the safety of, you know, Ethereum, Ethereus.
That's been the plan all. They're selling crypto. It's the world's slowest, most grandiose pump and dump.
Oh, that's so funny.
So cool. Well, I'm excited either way. I think, you know, while we talk about the excitement of PvP and Beast Tribes and Alliance raids and Ultimates, that's because we can talk about those. Like, there's a lot of guessing when it comes to story, and it's a very private experience for many people. I don't know if my plan is to clear it first and try to avoid getting spoiled. If I don't clear it the first like few hours that the patch goes live, it's probably because I've slept on it and decided that I'm going to save it until Thursday, my last day streaming of the week. And so I would either, I think, clear it Tuesday or Thursday, maybe Monday, maybe the following Monday. I don't know. Like, that's where I'm at, is like, do I clear it or do I wait? And that's just something that, like, I don't know what the better call is. But I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Guys, let us know what you're most excited about story-wise. And also, again, go check out Eorzean Archives. Excellent content creators. And we really appreciate the work that they do, because it's nice for me to kind of chill out and listen and get some lore in my day, which is always really good. Kind of, especially as a even as a refresher, you know, after all these, how long has it been? How long have I waited? Chris, why don't you take us out, man?
Well, guys, enjoy 6.1. Take it at whatever pace you want. Remember that we are also this patch getting housing, getting ultimates, getting Beast Tribes, getting Hildebrand, getting Tataru's Grand Endeavors, getting new calling cards, like all sorts of new stuff. So there will be a lot there day one. There will be a lot there in 2 weeks. There will be a lot there in 2 months. There will be a lot there in 3 months. There's a lot coming your way. And so it's a great time to be a 14 player. And we look forward to sharing each and every step along the way with you. So we'll see you next time.
Take care.